Welcome to the Relevance Report, where we explore the relevant stories that are shaping our world today. I'm Stacey Pontilia, your host this week. On today's show, separatists in Alberta are hard at work collecting signatures for their movement, which raises the concern on whether or not Alberta may possibly have a provincial referendum. Then, we'll talk all about the rise of consumerist self-care, and finally, we will dive into the hit series Heated Rivalry. Recently, many Canadian citizens feel as if they've been left behind. Across Alberta, long lines have formed as people demand for their voices to be heard. A recent Ipsos poll showed that support for the Alberta separatist movement has been on the rise for the past 2 years. Here's Thomas Muir with an opinion piece.
An Alberta independence vote isn't a brave stand. It's not a bold new vision. It's going to be a distraction. It's going to be an expensive distraction. Because before we can even talk about whether Alberta should leave Canada, why don't we talk about what it would actually solve? Was it going to solve high grocery prices? No, I don't think so. It's going to solve healthcare wait times? I don't see how. Housing, infrastructure, education? All it's going to do is take money away from those things. Instead, we're going to be spending our time, energy, and millions of public dollars on a symbolic protest that leads nowhere. An independence vote will not automatically make Alberta a country. It will not trigger freedom, prosperity, or instant control over our future. What it triggers is years of legal battles, negotiations, constitutional chaos, and economic uncertainty. Businesses don't invest during times of uncertainty. Doctors don't want to relocate to areas of uncertainty. This will hurt the province. Running a province-wide vote will cost millions of dollars. That's preparing studies, creating legal opinions, crafting the arguments, campaigns, committees, all while our hospitals are understaffed, classrooms are overcrowded, municipalities across the province are begging for funding, abandoned oil wells are being left to rot, and our government is focused on a charade. The Alberta Conservatives say that it's about sending a message. It's about telling Ottawa we can no longer be pushed around. But here's the thing. Messages will not pave our roads. Messages will not fund our healthcare. Messages will not lower our utility bills. If Alberta has legitimate grievances with the federal government, and it does, there are tools that already exist to fight for the provincial interest. Negotiations, court, interprovincial alliances, elections. But these tools are boring. They're slow, and they don't make headlines, so we sensationalize a vote that'll make us free. An independence vote creates a false binary, us versus them, Alberta versus the rest of Canada. And while that might feel satisfying in the short term, it just weakens us in the long run. You don't gain influence by threatening to flip the table every time you're unhappy with the game. Let's be real, this isn't about independence, it's about frustration, anger, and people feeling unheard. The feelings are valid, but the solution is not.
Alberta is home to 5 million people. Recently, the United Conservative Party proposed the idea of a referendum to vote on if Alberta should separate from the rest of Canada. It started to generate headlines. I look at what a referendum could mean for the people living in the province. Since 2024, many Albertans have begun to doubt their commitment to Canada. This doubt stems from several factors, with concerns surrounding Alberta's petroleum industry being one of the most significant. Based on economic data from 2024 to 2025, it was said that Alberta provided the most money in terms of GDP per capita. In addition, Alberta is the country's largest oil producer, accounting for approximately 85% of Canada's total oil output. And while Alberta has had disagreements with the federal government for decades, these conflicts never seriously strained their relationship. That is, until the 2025 Canadian elections. The aftermath of the election showed doubt for many Albertans, particularly due to the fact that Alberta is currently being governed by the United Conservative Party, the adversary to the more liberal values of the winning federal party. This, along with the belief that Alberta has been mistreated and overlooked by Eastern Canada for years, has caused many Albertans to feel undermined and disrespected, thus questioning their loyalty. As support for separation grows, the Alberta government has introduced changes that make the ability to start a referendum more achievable. In July of 2025, a bill known as the Election Status Amendment Act, Bill 54, was introduced to the public. The bill alters a lot of things, with lowering the number of signatures required to start a referendum and adjusting donation rules to allow businesses to financially support political parties and their campaigns, being the most notable. But what does this mean for the whole of Alberta? Let's look at the statistics. On May 2025, an online survey was conducted by the Angus Reid Institute. In this survey, a randomized sample of 790 Albertan adults with varying economic, social, and ethnic backgrounds were asked if they oppose or were in favor of being separated. 41% strongly opposed the idea, while the 28% were in favor of separating, with the remaining 31% being either moderately supportive of either sides. The idea of separation not only increases political tension with Canada, but it also faces many issues that are often overlooked, such as treaty rights and Indigenous land. Treaties that are set by the federal government state that Indigenous people have the right to their land, resources, and governmental support. Due to these agreements, many non-separatist groups say that pursuing separation would be nearly impossible, since there are many Indigenous groups that live in Alberta that still want to be connected to Canada. This also raises concern about the tax monies being spent. Holding referendums when the majority of Canadians do not support separation could result in thousands of taxpayers' dollars being spent on a process that has little chance of being a success. But while the topic of separation grows rampant in the media, many Albertans have still expressed their dedication in staying with the country. Campaigns such as Forever Canada have launched petitions aimed at reinforcing the bonds of national identity. This petition has garnered a lot of public interest, attracting the attention and support of hundreds of individuals who share a common vision for a united Canada. Regardless of whether or not the referendum does play out, these sets of events show that Albertans continue to take an active interest in Alberta's provincial issues and the state of their livelihoods. While time can only tell, ongoing discussions are helping guide Albertans towards a better future for their beloved province. Do daily coffees and mini hauls really fulfill our need for comfort? Are most of us creating toxic habits while brands are reaping the benefits? Caitlin St. Nicholas unpacks the rise of treat culture and how we can shift from the mind of consumerist-based self-care to a meaningful and lasting form.
Treat culture isn't exactly a new concept, but it has become common and normalized daily practice for some. Maybe you've had a long week with exams, and a mini shopping spree feels long overdue. Maybe you stayed up late studying, and buying lunch today feels like a treat, because it also buys you an extra 20 minutes in bed. Treat culture isn't exclusive to Gen Z, but what feels different now is the frequency and the way we treat ourselves. It's something we reach for quickly, casually, and sometimes without thinking about it. Previous generations had their own versions of treat culture too. Sydney Lake from Fortune magazine points out how, quote, the silent generation might have gravitated toward a new dress for a special occasion. Boomers might splurge on a vacation or a car after a long-awaited promotion. And Gen X might lean into a late-night treat in the name of relaxation. Different eras, different treats, but the same idea: reward, comfort, relief. In the wake of today's treat culture, brand and marketing strategists have doubled down on this growing pleasure-centered habit. Dominic Peters from Quirks magazine describes how brands have the opportunity to profit off Gen Z, quote, finding joy in the little things, end quote. And honestly, that definition of a treat has expanded beyond indulgent snacks to things like a new nail polish, a quick mini haul, or popping out for a fancy coffee. And I get it. In a world that feels exhausting, unstable, and overstimulating, these little moments of joy feel like something we can control. They feel like a reset button, a reward, a soft landing. But I think the real question is, are we treating ourselves or are we coping? Say we normalize this consumerist way of treat culture and average our daily coffee run to $10. Over the course of a month, that could easily turn into $250 to $300 depending on how often you leave your house. And at the higher end, that's $3,600 a year on a treat yourself habit. That number adds up fast, not because anyone is irresponsible, but because treat culture is built to feel harmless. It's always just $10. It's always just this one thing, and it always feels deserved, especially when you're tired, stressed, burnt out, or trying to get through something hard. But what if we challenge that perception? What if we saved that $10 a day instead towards a flight, towards a TFSA, or towards paying off a debt that's been sitting on your chest for months. Sometimes the biggest act of self-care isn't buying that treat. It's building a future where you don't constantly need one just to survive your week. And I also want to challenge the narrative that a treat has to be rooted in consumerism at all. Because what if we started treating ourselves in ways that actually restore us? What if the treat becomes a walk along the river valley with your phone in your pocket and not in your hand? What if the treat is baking something new from leftovers in your kitchen? What if it's setting aside time to read your favorite novel in a steamy bubble bath, and not because you've earned it through productivity, but because you're allowed to care about yourself without needing a reason? Maybe the goal isn't to eliminate treat culture. Maybe the goal is to redefine it. To shift from I bought something to I took care of myself. Because real self-care doesn't always come in a shopping bag. Sometimes it comes in rest, in fresh air, in saying no, in slowing down, in doing something that makes your nervous system feel safe again. And honestly, that kind of treat lasts a lot longer.
The new television series Heated Rivalry has been popular across the globe. The series tells the story of two queer rival hockey players, and it openly embraces same-sex relationships. The series defies the typical macho man norms of men's sports. Here's Aubrey Sorkin with more.
The television adaptation of Rachel Reed's novel Heated Rivalry is currently the most talked about television show we have seen in years. The series follows two rival hockey players, Ilya Rosnoff and Shane Hollander, as they compete on the ice and with love. What starts off as a lust-filled hookup quickly turns into a deep-rooted situationship that rocked the hearts of viewers across the globe. The television show, since being released, has resonated deeply with millions. It demonstrates a raw and emotional relationship between two males in a way that hasn't been done before, resulting in the series hitting HBO Max's global top 10 chart and holding the #1 television series spot in over 5 different countries, despite it being Canadian produced. But the success of Heated Rivalry isn't about rankings and popularity. The important message lies in Ilya and Shane's relationship and how it resonates with people in a personal way. The series has become very popular for many reasons, the most significant being the relatable and deep relationship between Shane and Ilya. Through the hockey players' complicated connection, we see growth, heartbreak, and emotion, all valid and real feelings many people experience in their own lives. The relatability of these on-screen characters make the show feel real and captivating because it feels as though the emotions you've experienced are being seen and appreciated. Shane and Ilya's connection specifically highlights the complicated side of love, showing that fighting between your heart and mind, tension, and emotional growth are normal parts of any relationship. More importantly, it reminds viewers that it is okay to not have things completely figured out. Instead of following a similar storyline to other television series about queer relationships, Heated Rivalry does things refreshingly different. Rather than putting a heavy focus on topics like coming out and discrimination, the series quite amazingly focuses on Shane and Ilya's emotions and deep relationship, bringing alive characters whose identities extend beyond just their sexuality. This portrayal allows the audience to feel and understand the relationship, making the romance raw and authentic rather than just something symbolic. Across the world, people are feeling a sense of comfort and validation after watching the show, seeing that love can be shown without it being framed around struggle and hardship. Rachel Reed and the producers didn't just make a popular TV series, they contributed to creating a more connected and understanding way of telling queer stories. If you haven't already done so, buy that Crave subscription and get watching. Not just for the romance, but to remind yourself that it's okay to feel lost, confused, and love so deeply it hurts.
Thanks for joining us for the Relevance Report. This week's episode was produced by Aubrey Sorkin, Caitlin St. Nicholas, Thomas Muir, and me, Stacey Pontilia. The show was edited by Caitlin St. Nicholas. The show's supervising producer is Sheena Rossiter, and additional studio supervision by Sasha Stanojevic. And I'm Stacey Pontilia, your host for this week's episode. This episode was produced as a part of BCSC 206. The course is part of the Bachelor of Communication Studies program in the Department of Communications at MacEwan University. The show was edited and produced out of the MacEwan Media Production Studio. Our theme is called Buzzing by Kaylee Lambert. The tracks used for the topics in order are Mortada Dusk by artist MO47, No Copyright Music Lo-Fi by Ecolix, Groovy Vibe by Brands Boy, and Iona by Rockhot. These were taken from Pixabay. Logo design for this podcast is by Sasha Stanoivich. The podcast was recorded on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux. We acknowledge that this territory is home to the Métis settlement and the Métis Nation of Alberta, Districts 9, 10, and 11 within the historical North Saskatchewan River Territory. Don't forget to subscribe to the Relevance Report on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you heard, please leave us a review and rating. It really helps people find the show. Please join us again next week when we report the relevant stories that are shaping our world.